It's a nice one. I'm in Romania, you're in Istanbul,
Yeah.
and we thought it would be a good idea to have a discussion on a range of topics to hopefully provide guys who are listening to this with a shitload of value, and hopefully they are wiser, better people after listening to this. So I think it'd be good to kick off just talking about our travels really over this
Yeah.
past year. Any particular places that you've been to where you've had a good time? Maybe what your experiences have been
Yeah.
like in those places. Like anything that you wanna say.
Yeah. So, well, right now I'm in Turkey. I spent quite a bit of time actually, well, actually most of this year actually in the UK. But before Turkey, I was in Serbia, Sweden, Germany for a bit, just doing coaching, just doing a few boot camps here and there. And last year I was briefly in Czech Republic and Ukraine. So been around a fair bit, and yeah, been to a few places. It's been really good. Just the experience itself of just being able to travel, and you know that you've got the skill set to just meet like incredibly beautiful women. It's just amazing, and it's just an experience that everyone should have. You know, so many guys are like confining themselves to the UK, whether that's maybe that's because they have to, but you know, everyone's got like holiday time. It's about kind of how you spend that, isn't it? If you are, you know, a single guy and you've got a bit of holiday time, then you know, get the fuck out of the UK and just have an amazing time. You know, that's what I recommend. But yeah,
Something then I wanted to ask you then. Let's say there is a single guy who has got holiday time who is listening to this, and let's say he is planning to do a solo day game journey. All right, he's not sure where he wants to go yet, but he knows he wants to do a solo day game journey. What advice would you give to someone in that position? He's on his own. He wants to go on a solo trip. Like, what would be your advice as someone who's been there and done it?
yeah. So, well, first of all, I think like that sense of adventure is that something that you just really need to have. Like, you know, not being afraid just to put yourself out there and just explore a new place. It can feel like really intimidating, like, you know, the first few times that you're doing it, but you get used to it, and then you just realize that actually there's so much to explore, so much to like gain from just throwing yourself into a new place that you're not used to. And it's just an amazing experience, you know, aside from like dating and girls and that kind of thing, just the act of just putting yourself into like a new place is just amazing. So that's like the main thing I would say, like first and foremost. But you know, when it comes to, you know, doing approaches, you know, one thing I've always found actually is that like when you are in a new place, it can feel really intimidating to just do those first few approaches, because you're just thinking to yourself like, oh shit, you know, where am I? Is it okay to do it here? You know, you get all these like little voices in your head, you know, or like, you kind of question yourself a little bit. And when you just say fuck it and you just do it anyway, you know, that attitude of just letting go, not giving a fuck, doing it anyway, regardless of how you feel. You know, that's when you realize, hang on a minute, actually most people at fundamental level are just the same. It doesn't matter where you are. You know, girls are girls, people are people. And you know, if you go in with positive energy, with, you know, value to, you know, you bring value to the conversation, people are going to react positively, you know, and that applies to anywhere, because everyone's got all these like preconceived or like preconceptions about certain places, like, oh no, you can't do it in this place, or if you do it in this place, you're going to get rejected all the time, or whatever, you know. Um, in the end, yeah, you just kind of got to embrace it and just put your foot forward and just do what you can. You know, have zero expectations, but just enjoy it regardless. You know, that's what I think. But yeah, like you know, whenever you go to a new place, you're always going to feel a bit intimidated. You're always going to feel a little bit like, you know, is it okay to do it here? Is it okay? You know, is someone gonna like like call the police on me for like chatting up a girl or something? But in the end, you know, it's just like no one's gonna do that. No one really gives a fuck about you, what you're doing. No one knows that you're going to approach that girl over there. It's all just your own mind creating these false narratives. And actually, you know, even though you're in a new place, it's not so much the actual environment itself, it's your own perception of that environment and your own mind. It's just your relationship with your own mind in the end, really.
Yeah, it reminds me of that quote. I'm not sure who said it. I think some ancient Greek bloke, but he said we suffer more in imagination than in reality. I've always liked that because it is true. You know, we do definitely feed ourselves a lot of false narratives. I think when you mentioned though about having, because you know when you do go to a new place and it can feel a bit overwhelming because you've got that like novelty aspect. I think you can definitely flip that on its head and use that anonymity to your advantage because, like you say, like nobody knows you. You're not going to bump into anybody you went to school with. If you're in Krakow or Vienna, then you know you've really got free reign of the playing field to just recreate yourself. You know, it's like when like you go to university. I don't know if you went to university, but like when you go to university, you can be whoever you want to be. It doesn't matter if you're like you're a complete loser in school. You've got that opportunity to recreate yourself, even if you're only in that place for a weekend. I think it's good to experiment with new ways of being and try out new personas because I think a lot of guys get very static in their identity, and it's like, oh, I've been this way all my life, so I have to be this way forever. I don't think people realize you can play as many characters as you want until you find the one you actually like. So no, that's good. So, I mean, you said that were you in which parts of Ukraine were you in?
Just Odessa, actually. Yeah, just
Okay.
Odessa, which is it's a nice little city. It's got like I'd say like a fairly sort of like normal European city kind of vibe for the most
Hmm.
part, but it's also got like a bit of a sort of party vibe as well. If you go to like essentially it's divided into kind of two main hotspots. You've got like the city center, which yeah, it's more of like a general sort of European feel to the place. But then there's also Arcadia, which is more of a sort of party place. You know, it's got beach bars, it's got the beach itself, you know, various bars and clubs and that kind of thing. Um, and yeah, what I would say about Odessa is that like obviously Ukraine, you know, it's known for having the hottest women in the world, and I guess they kind of know that because they are kind of used to kind of foreign guys coming over, and a lot of them know that they come over for the women because to be completely honest, in Ukraine there's not that much else to kind of see there. There's not like it's not like you've got the Eiffel Tower or something like that, Um, but yeah, I think like there's a lot of Ukrainian women who they do go for foreign guys. They are into foreign guys as long as you're not kind of giving kind of sex tourist vibes. So that's really important, I think. Um,
Hmm.
and as long as you've got some integrity about you, you're not just there as a tourist just trying to get laid, because that's one thing they really don't like that much, especially if it's obvious.
Do you find
'Cause
that's do you find that's consistent amongst the majority of the places that you visit?
Um, I'd say it's more the case in some compared to others. So, for
Hmm.
example, I was in Playa in Mexico, Playa del Carmen. This was about like year and a half ago, and there, like, it's a bit of a kind of it's got a bit of a sleazy vibe, and there are a lot of kind of there is a lot of sex tourism going on, but even in the other way around as well. There's a lot of like girls looking to hook up with foreigners. It works the other way as well. Um, and so I feel like there you can almost kind of get away with it a bit more because people are there on holiday. They don't give a fuck. They know you're not going to see them again in like in a few months or whatever.
Hmm.
So there's a lack of kind of yeah, like it's just a bit more chilled of a place. Whereas I think if you go to like one of these cities in Ukraine, well, obviously before the war, I feel like because it's the culture is generally a bit more conservative and a bit more traditional, they're not gonna just be like, oh wow, it's a foreigner. Oh wow, he's got so much SMV or whatever. Yeah, I'll
Hmm.
just I'll just go with whatever he wants. It doesn't really work like that.
Yeah,
Certainly, like from my experience, like a lot of the girls were like complaining a lot, just when we were dating for one thing, or another, and it could have been about anything. And like the girls, they're not like necessarily desperately looking for like that foreign guy. It's not like it adds that much value.
yeah, that's interesting. I think that's a key point that any guy needs to keep in mind. Just because you've got a British passport doesn't mean that you're going to clean up abroad. And certainly, if you're a loser back home, you're still going to be a loser abroad unless you actually build your value across the board. I think it's often been a mistake that guys make. Like if they go on like lads' holidays to Tenerife or Ibiza, I mean, those places may well be different, because I'm sure Ibiza is probably easier than places in the UK like Scunthorpe. But that being said, it's definitely something that people should keep in mind. Like, just because you go abroad doesn't mean that results are going to fall into your lap. Like, you still actually have to become proficient at this skill set. The art of communication remains the same wherever you go. How do you find things such as, I'm asking these questions, by the way, because I know you've done a lot more traveling with Daygame than I have. So I'm curious to learn about this stuff. Like, how do you find things like language barriers when you're going to these places? Like, do you make an active effort to learn the particular language, or do you try and get by with the little that you've got? Like, how do you go about it?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't put as much effort as I should into learning the native language. To be honest, like, a lot of the time you're kind of just playing the numbers game and just kind of, approaching enough to the point where someone eventually speaks half decent English. That's kind of what you're hoping for. However, a lot of the time that might not be the case. Because I remember in Ukraine, it was something like maybe a third of the girls you would approach would speak halfway decent English, and then the rest would just be like, they would either speak absolutely no English or just extremely shit English, to the point where you can't even have a half decent conversation. And those ones would, they would never end up going anywhere for obvious reasons. So there's that approach, but then another approach that I've kind of developed a bit more recently, which is just trying to kind of go into the interaction with as much like conviction and determination as possible, and just having as basic of a conversation as possible, like, hi, what's your name, where are you from? Oh, I'm from the UK, nice to meet you. Just really, really basic stuff, and then kind of leveraging your Instagram to reveal a bit more value than you would be able to otherwise do in the interaction. So she kind of goes away thinking, okay, he's a foreign guy, a bit of a language barrier, oh, but he's a really high value guy, as seen from his Instagram. So that's kind of what you tend to do a lot of the time, or at least I've been doing that. Recently, certainly in Turkey, I've been doing that, but also in Ukraine, I was doing that a fair bit. But yeah, I feel like, when you go to places where there isn't that much of a language barrier, like Poland, or even like in Mexico, like in Playa del Carmen, it does tend to attract a lot of tourists, and a lot of other day gamers, or other guys who are trying to pick up girls. They tend to get attracted to those places, and they do get a bit, the places do end up being a bit more saturated. So, for example, like Poland this year, I never went to Poland this year, but apparently loads of guys were over there, and it did feel a bit like, it's a bit saturated. Did you actually did you go to Poland this year?
Yeah, so I was in Krakow for the month of August.
Okay.
So that was my first time ever doing a long-term European excursion. So I was running boot camps out there, and obviously I was also enjoying the city myself. I mean, first impressions for me, just like the first time that I'd been somewhere for this length of time, I really enjoyed it. In Krakow, certainly, I didn't get the impression that the city was oversaturated. Like, I definitely saw guys who were doing it, but they tended to be just always in the same areas. There's a place called what's it called? It's like Krakowa Galleria or something. It's basically this big shopping center in Krakow.
Yeah.
And it's where I would go just to get like my shopping. And you could always find guys in there who were doing it. But the city had loads of great places, a lot of like unexplored territory as well. Like, the place I was staying was like near the river by the castle. That was like a tourist trap up there, and I rarely saw other guys up there. They all seem to just be concentrated in, like, because it gets very territorial with this. I don't know if you ever found that in London.
Really?
Like, guys will find their favorite spot where they like to go, say like Carnaby Street, for example, and they'll just like spam the absolute fuck out of it. They'll just stay in that one place because maybe they've got good results there in the past. But I think what everyone needs to understand when they do this is you need to pursue variety. You can't just be staying in the same place, approaching the same girls at the same time. Otherwise, you're going to get a reputation for yourself, no matter where you are in the world.
Yeah, and even then, it doesn't necessarily yield the best results, I find, as well. Because, like, I'd say, like, in my first year or two of Daygame, I was mostly just going up and down Oxford Street in London, and
Classic.
classic, yeah. And it kind of affects you like psychologically and mentally, because you don't have that new stimulus, which is like, when you go to a new place, you're kind of in that zone where you're absorbing, new information around you, and that's kind of actually providing that inspiration for more interesting conversation. And you just don't get that when you're in the same areas all the time. It just becomes routine. And like in my first like year or two of Daygame, I just came across a bit robotic and a bit like, I wasn't using scripted lines, but like the vibe I was giving off was that like
it sounded like
a bit like scripted.
tucked away in your bedroom all day, memorizing the stuff
Yeah,
that you're watching.
exactly. And some girls even called me out on that. They were like, "This sounds a bit scripted." One girl even told me like, "This sounds a bit scripted," even though it wasn't. But that was the vibe I was giving off. And of course, I got a lot of flakes because of that. And so yeah, it is. I think it's a valid point. And it is smart just to kind of diversify the areas you're going to if you can. If you're going out specifically to do day game, then yeah, I think that's smart. But obviously, now, now I don't necessarily go out to do that much, day game sessions. It's more about just integrating it into my life. So let's say I'm in a particular area and I need to go to do some shopping or meet a friend or go to the bus stop, whatever. Maybe I'll see a girl on the way there. And if so, yeah, I'll approach her. So in that sense, yeah, I'll be approaching in kind of the same areas, but it's more a result of circumstance rather than going out of my way to do it, kind of thing. So yeah.
And how long would you say it took you to got to that point? Because for me, I think for any guy listening, that's really the holy grail. I think it's why every guy gets into this. It's like no one wants to be parading around the pavements for 8 hours every day for 800 years of their life. If you manage to live that long, fair play to you. But like, how long did it take you to actually arrive at that point where it has become something you are rather than something you do?
Yeah, I would say maybe about 3-4 years. I would say,
Okay.
because I think that's like what really kind of gets you more into that advanced territory, where you have that self-discipline to just do it even when you don't feel like doing it. So like, let's say, you've just come back from doing whatever and you're on your way back home. You're really not in the mood. You're knackered. You're tired. You're not in the best kind of headspace. But you know that you've got that huge wealth of reference experience from the past where you just force yourself to do it anyway because nothing bad's going to happen. And even if you have a shit conversation, it's still better than nothing. And you never know what's going to come from it. So you just do it anyway. And it's a mentality that takes time to develop for most people. It's very easy for me to say this stuff, but to actually go out there and implement it, very few people actually do that. Very few people do that. But that's really where it's at. That's where you're really embracing it, not just doing it just because it's time to do some day game now, kind of thing.
And okay, so it took you like 3 and 4 years to do it. Like, what was you actually like before you got involved with Daygame? You know what I mean? Like, what was your like social ability / background like?
Yeah, it was pretty shit to be honest. So like I got into pranks before I was doing day game, which was
I've seen the channel. I've seen
yeah
the channel. It's actually really
yeah
funny. The one where you
it,
were asking philosophical questions to drunk girls. I
yeah all of that
very much enjoyed that.
Yeah, and like that was good because it kind of it's a way to kind of put yourself out there and express yourself freely without kind of having it be about like, oh, I need to pick up this girl or I need to get a certain phone number or anything like that. It's a way to just express yourself like freely, and that helps you because it's a much easier transition towards doing something like day game. When you've already done some crazy stuff, it's a much easier transition, as opposed to like, most guys when they're trying to get into day game, they have to kind of, start off just by doing an approach eventually, and that can be a lot more difficult, certainly compared to what I was doing anyway. But, in the end, it's all about kind of putting yourself out there one way or another and just kind of forcing yourself to do it, forcing yourself to move your legs, open your mouth, and say a few words to another human being. That's ultimately what it's about. So everyone has to go about it their own way, I guess. But in the end, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it was similar for me as well because I was about 13 and I started performing magic for people around the Lake District, and it was nice to have that thing there, which was the sort of the interlude between you and the person. Like I was approaching people and I had like a pack of cards in my hand, so it felt a lot easier to actually go in for the approach as opposed to it just being me there. So no, it's interesting. Do you still do the prank stuff?
I want to, but it's kind of hard because I like to do it with like another person who can like
Right.
film, and because like the thing is like not everybody can like film this stuff because sometimes you have to go inside shops or like into like certain places or whatever, but it is a lot of fun. And I haven't done a video in a long time actually, but it is something I enjoy. But it is also difficult to do it when you're like traveling or when you're not in the UK, because it's not like it's
Mm.
impossible, but it's just not quite the same when like people don't speak English, or like you're
Mm.
trying to have like a funny interaction with someone, and like the ability to actually have that conversation isn't quite there.
I guess that would
Um,
be quite funny in itself, though, if you were just
it could, yeah,
incessantly talking at some guy, some poor
yeah,
man in the shop who was you tried to buy a Mars bar off him, and he was just giving you the whole shop apart from the Mars bar. Well,
yeah,
listen, if you're ever in London and you wanted to make another one of those, I would happily put myself forward to collaborate on a prank video with you. I think that would be
yeah,
that'd be very funny. I've always liked that sort of content, and
yeah,
yeah, I think it's good for guys to be able to do not necessarily prank videos, but have things outside of day game which complements the day game side of things. Like if you've got
yeah,
passions or hobbies or activities that you pursue, which always put you in front of people, whether it's boxing, salsa, pole fitness, whatever it is. If you're constantly putting the reps in on a social level, you're always flexing your conversation muscles, and certainly day game becomes a lot easier. It doesn't
yeah,
become this like really difficult thing. It's like, oh, I'm having conversations throughout my entire life. This is simply an extension of that.
yeah.
So I think that's good. I think too many guys just get sucked into the day game rabbit hole and they become day gamers rather than just using this as a complement to their life. It becomes their entire life, which is
Yeah.
it always becomes a bit of a shit show.
Another thing as well, yeah, I mean, what you're saying there is 100% true. But another thing is that it kind of gets you into that kind of humorous mind state where you're just expressing yourself and you're just like having a laugh. Because, so many people take this day game stuff so seriously. And that's why
Mm.
they end up having like these one-dimensional conversations or quite boring conversations. It's because they're just far too serious. Whereas what they really need to do is just kind of let go and just like just make a complete twat out of themselves, even, when you're speaking to someone, but they're really afraid to like actually get into that territory,
And
when,
why do you think that actually is?
yeah,
What do you think is actually stopping a guy from letting go when they're in
yeah.
conversations or life in general?
I think it's a bit of a defense mechanism. Maybe it's like subconscious. Maybe it's something to do with protecting their ego. Um, I think a lot of it is down to like social conditioning. Being afraid to 100% fully express themselves in whichever way they want to when they're meeting a new person, or like if it's a stranger. So, for example, you're even like, for example, just normal day game stuff. One of the reasons why somebody might struggle to really connect with that person is because they're just meeting a new human for the first time, and so they're not taking any risks in actually expressing themselves how they want to express themselves, because it's a new person, and because there's certain, let's say, there's certain expectations about what that person wants to hear, and so you're kind of falling into that kind of frame, I guess. um, I think that's one of the issues. I think it's kind of like, whenever you meet a new person for the first time, you put up this kind of like this barrier in place where it's like you're not able to say a certain thing, or you're not able to say what you really want to say for fear of offending them, or for fear of not kind of meeting their expectations. But whereas when you
Mm.
kind of let go of that, when you take that risk in conversation where you say the things that you wouldn't normally say, that's
Mm.
when you actually end up being more charismatic, or you end up being actually funnier, or actually an interesting person to speak to, because you're actually not afraid to actually express yourself how you actually want to. And ultimately that comes from fear. It's all about kind of the way you're managing fear, because everybody has fear to some extent or another. It's just how you manage that, and the kind of, I guess, the let's say, like, the extent you're willing to kind of just let go and just not give a fuck, that's what it comes down to ultimately. So
yeah, I think that is real authentic attraction then, when she's actually able to get an impression of you as you are, rather than how you're trying to make yourself perceived. But I do think as well, like, social media, especially like the red pill manospheric content that gets churned out there, I do think that affects guys a lot. I think even though it's under the umbrella of self-improvement, it's like done in a way which is marketed to be helping guys to improve their lives. I do think you can go too far down the red pill rabbit hole, and all of a sudden you become a robot. You become a slave to self-improvement, and that you meet guys, like, I don't know if you've met guys who are like so like big into this whole like self-improvement thing. Like 100%, that's great to actually want to improve yourself. Everyone should do it, but they become self-improvement junkies, and it's like they don't know how to actually have human conversations anymore that don't revolve around gratitude journaling or cold showers or meditation. It's just like, I think that for me anyway, with guys who I teach or guys who I come into contact with, they struggle to humanize their conversations because their entire lives they're not living a human lifestyle. It's all online. It's all like their lives are just a series of checklists. And it's no wonder when they put themselves in front of a real woman, if they ever do, that they struggle to actually connect with her on a human level, because their life is far from actually being human.
Yeah, it's also a bit of a cultish mentality as well, which all comes down to the way, or like, let's say, self-identity. It's like how you want your identity to be revealed. It's like, oh, I follow these red pill guys, I'm into self-improvement. And you get so bogged down into that rabbit hole, as you say, where it just defines everything that you do and everything that you say and everything that how you express yourself. And yeah, it can actually, even though it is obviously you're getting into that for potentially positive reasons, it can actually it can make you a bit more one-dimensional and actually limit the way you can actually express yourself, I think. So yeah, it is something to kind of be a bit wary of. It's like, there's so many of these like subcultures on the internet. I think it's important just to kind of, take bits from everywhere, but not get so fucking bogged down on one particular thing, because that's when you do get into that kind of cultish mindset, which is just, it's just not, like you say, it's just not really human. It's just too.
They become unnecessarily extremist in their views.
Yeah.
It's like you're either this or you're that, but it can also become a smokescreen for actually not taking the action with girls. Because let's be real, like, everyone gets into self-improvement because they want to attract girls. It's why basically guys do anything. It's to spread your seed and to procreate. But I think, like, with the self-improvement movement, it's so easy for self-improvement to become this smokescreen where guys are doing all these things apart from actually learning how to speak to girls. Like, for me, self-improvement on its own won't actually make you successful with women. Like, what will make you successful with women is actually spending time around women, having experiences with women. But a lot of the manospheric content will tell guys that women are almost these like deep demonic force, and you have to ignore women. Build yourself, build your value, and then they'll be throwing themselves at you when you get into your 30s. But I think that's a very dangerous concept for guys, especially young guys. I think it's dangerous to follow that advice because, if a young guy gets to say like 35 years old, he's not had any experience with women, he's never had his heart broken, he doesn't know how to handle rejection, and he's just been brainwashed into believing that success, like materialistic trophies, are going to be the answer to all his problems. He's going to get women throwing themselves at him. That's a very dangerous position for that guy to be in if he's going to his mid-30s and he still can't actually have a conversation with a woman. So I think if you are going to follow this self-improvement, you have to add actually having real-life experiences with women to your self-improvement tapestry. Otherwise, it's a little bit of a waste, in my opinion.
100%, yeah. And the thing is with this stuff, it takes time. It takes time to actually, get good at like harnessing your social skills, or, get good with actually forming those connections with people, just not even just women, just people in general, improving your social skills, depending on, what kind of background you come from, I guess. But yeah, and even just like, going on dates with girls, my first year of, going on dates with girls, I didn't have a fucking clue what I was doing, you know. I made so many stupid mistakes and just complete fuck ups that, if I left it till I was 35, it's like, oh, I'm in my prime now. Oh, let's go on dates all the time now.
And you'd still be taken to McDonald's.
Exactly. Or like, I'd still be trying to go for my first kiss on like the 10th date or something. It's just like,
you managed to get 10 dates out of that. Fucking hell. I need to change my system, man. Like, is it the McFlurry? The McFlurry
should have seen me on my first year of Daygame. Yeah. But yeah, it's just like the thing
I'm curious now. Like, what was beginner ed like?
Yeah, it was awkward. It was a bit of a shit show, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, I remember like my first or second date from Daygame. It was like I would take them to like a Pret a Manger for my first date, and it would just be like me just talking absolute nonsense about like my favorite films or my favorite TV shows or whatever. And the girl was just sitting there just fucking bored out of her head, even though I was thinking like, why is she fucking bored? Like, this is interesting. Like, I'm talking about...
I bet in your head you were like, this is going so good.
Yeah. I was talking about like Game of Thrones. I was talking about my favorite episode of Lost. And like, and then I was going away.
And you realize the girl's gone.
Why is she sending me a text the next day saying, "Oh, it's nice to meet you. It's not you, it's me. Oh, I think all this stuff. But yeah, like, yeah, I've had some funny experiences. There was also another one where like I knew that I needed to kind of sexualize it a bit more. So I left it to like the second date. I just had like a big meal with a girl. So I paid for like a massive dinner for both of us. And then at the end, I was like, fuck, I should probably make a move on her. So we're walking back to the train, to the tube station. And then I'm like, so it's like, when it's like an awkward goodbye. And I was like, right. So I said to her, right, I'm going to kiss you now. And then I kind of went in for the kiss, like really awkwardly. And it's just like the worst possible moment because I still had to kind of go down the escalator with her like afterwards. But she was like super repulsed. But I actually like rolled her eyes at me and stuff. It was just an absolute fucking car crash. But yeah, but the thing is, you have to kind of go through that stuff to learn from it, And like as you say, like if you're leaving it to like your or like mid-30s or into your 30s when you're at your prime, it's just like, what are you doing? You need to go through these like really awkward moments to kind of understand what you're doing and also understand who you are as well, what kind of resonates with you and what's like the best approach for yourself. Because you and I, we give a lot of advice about dating and approaching and social skills and that kind of thing, but ultimately each individual has to find kind of what resonates with them and what kind of style suits them as a person. Because obviously you've got your style, people resonate with that, same with me. But in the end, you've kind of got to practice it and see actually what works for you ultimately.
Definitely. And that's why I would actually never give any guy comprehensive first date advice or any dating advice in general, because the way that I date girls would not be applicable to anyone else apart from me. Like it works because that's just how I am with dates. I'm very nonsensical. I like to break the fourth wall. I like to speak about things that guys wouldn't typically speak about. But if I was to take a guy who I coach and be like, copy what I say word for word, it would blow up in his face. It just wouldn't work because he's not me. And it's not about being like miniature versions of me or miniature versions of you. It's being full-size versions of the guys who are actually learning this stuff. And like you say, you're only going to get that by spending time in the trenches. You're not going to get it from a YouTube video or a blog or a podcast. You're going to learn it by actually having that experience for yourself in real life.
Exactly. And another thing as well, that's like, essentially what we're giving is theory about how you can approach certain situations. In the end, it's theory. But when you're in the field, or when you're speaking to a girl, on the street, or when you're actually on a date with a girl, that stuff kind of goes out the window in a lot of cases. You're not going to 100%. oh yeah,
Yeah.
Christian said at this point I need to do this, or like I need to go in for the kiss at this point, or whatever. You know, you're not thinking like that. You're if you're actually fully present with the person, you're not gonna be thinking, oh, okay, oh, it's time to do this now. And if you are thinking that, then you're not actually fully connecting with that person or with that girl that you're on a date with. So yeah, it's that's the thing. That's why everyone always says this. Like, theory is one thing, but when you're actually trying to practice it, it's completely different. A lot of that stuff goes out the window because you just don't have time to think about all that theory crap. It's so important to have that reference experience and just practice in real life.
Yeah, it's the same when I was 18, I did my first solo skydive, and you spend a weekend learning how to do it all, and they give you all the hashtag theory, they're telling you what to do at certain points. But like when you're in like it's suspended in the sky and you're just looking over the edge, you don't remember what that random Scottish bloke was telling you back in the nice cozy little cabin. It's like, oh fuck, I'm actually here. And yeah, I think a part of you does absorb the important information, but it's up to you to actually implement the information. And when you're in free fall, it's like everything else goes out the fucking window. All you're thinking of is just like survival. Like, I need to actually do this. So yeah, there was something else I was going to say, but I forgot. There was something else I wanted to ask you actually, which I was curious about. What are your top 3 places outside of the UK to day game and to meet girls in no particular order? Or you can order them if you want to.
Yeah. I would say for me, my best experiences have been, I would say, Ukraine, Mexico, and Turkey for me. Yeah, and they've all been quite different experiences as well, for one reason or another. Because like my first kind of experience of going abroad was actually to like nearby places from the UK, so like France, um, Amsterdam, stuff like that, and that was like okay. It was a bit different, but it's more or less fairly similar to what I was experiencing in London. It's fairly multicultural. A lot of tourists, good levels of English. It wasn't like massively different, but it was still kind of interesting. But it was only once you actually go further away from the UK where the experience changes quite dramatically. So when I landed in Ukraine, first of all, I was just absolutely shocked by the level of beauty there. It's just incredible. It's just like, like 5 supermodels every minute just walking down the street. It was just like, what the fuck is this? This is absolutely insane. So I was just thinking to myself, wow, this is incredible. This is amazing. And yeah, I did get quite a lot of success in terms of dating, but it was kind of a different dating experience and something I wasn't really used to before. Because back in London, I was doing quite a lot of fast escalation, and things were kind of progressing quickly and that kind of thing. And I did that a few times in Ukraine, didn't quite work out. The girl was kind of getting kind of maybe the wrong impression from me, and then I kind of tailored it a bit differently. I was still kind of spent a bit of time trying to figure out, what would kind of work for me, because I wasn't kind of looking to get like a long-term girlfriend at the time, but at the same time, I wanted to kind of get my kind of sexual intent across. Oh, one sec. Yeah. Yeah, so like it was just a different kind of experience for me in Ukraine. But it was good. It's like, it was quite, the girls are quite conservative there, and that's something that I wasn't used to. And it took a bit of time to just kind of familiarize myself with that kind of culture. Have you experienced that much yourself when you went to Poland? Because I know there's quite a lot of Ukrainian girls.
There was
Yeah.
a massive influx of Ukrainian girls when I was in Krakow. I mean, like I say, Krakow was my first proper experience of going abroad, and I mean, yeah, I can say from firsthand, that was the most successful place that I've been to. Like in that the month that I was there, like it was like what I found in Krakow especially were, and I don't even like instant dates, but I found like 1 in every 3 or 1 in every 4 girls who I was having conversation with, they were inviting me onto instant dates, whether that was a walk or to go and get a coffee or going to explore the city. But something you mentioned before, I think played a big factor in that, because when I was having conversations with these girls, I was genuinely curious about the city because I was a new person in that city. So I think when guys are going to these places, you've got that in your locker. If you are new to a city, it's like you can be led by curiosity. Like if that girl's got knowledge of the city that you don't have, she can basically become your tour guide. And you'll find that girls, especially the really feminine girls, they really like helping people. They really like taking you on these like adventures and showing you around the city. So yeah, certainly that's what I found. But I found, especially with the Ukrainian girls who are in Krakow, just like super receptive, super friendly, super feminine. And yeah, I had a really, really, really good time in Krakow. I would love to go back next year. I'll
Yeah,
probably spend
I
the same
find
amount of time there.
yeah, I found Ukrainian girls can be very culturally curious. So like a lot of the time, like you say, like they want to show you around and that kind of thing. But I found like they're really interested to find out more about your culture, your background, and that kind of thing, more so than kind of other nationalities. They're very kind of like just culturally curious. They want to know what it's like living in the UK or being brought up in the UK, and just finding out what you're interested in, what you do, what your life is like, that kind of thing. That's one thing I've noticed with Ukrainian girls in particular. But yeah, back to what you were saying earlier about the other places, so Mexico and Turkey. I'd say Mexico was great because it's just like, I guess it's like the gringo factor. Like before I
Mm,
went to Mexico, I'd never really had that feeling of just like so much abundance of like girls just being into you. Like that's
mm,
something that as a European guy going to another European country, you don't
mm,
really experience it that much. Like if you're kind of like a normal European dude, like you or me, like we kind of have to grind a little bit to get a genuinely hot girl, right? But when you go to Latin America, it's just like you have so much value of just being from Europe or being from the UK or America or whatever. And that's something that I feel like every guy should experience, you know, just having that just being able to go into that interaction where the girl is just like really into you, and there's just that raw attraction that sometimes you do,
mm,
it can be quite hard to find that, like on the streets of London, for example, where you approach a girl and there's that instant attraction, and yeah, she just really kind of wants things to kind of progress with you, and they're very kind of sexually liberal as well. They're not afraid to kind of express themselves. They're very kind of liberal with their intentions and that kind of thing. They're not afraid to kind of kiss you or whatever. Um,
mm,
that's not to say it's really easy over there, because if you want to get with a really hot girl over there, it's still going to take a substantial amount of work. Um, but yeah, it's like you can really kind of leverage the fact that you're from a Western country and that you have a lot of value, because a lot of these girls are they are attracted to foreigners. They do prefer foreigners more so than the native guys. And
mm,
that's actually what a lot of the girls in Turkey are saying as well, actually. Like a lot of them, they just don't like Turkish guys. That's what they've been telling me. And they are specifically going for foreigners. So in Turkey, for example, it's just been absolutely incredible in terms of, the sheer quality of the girls that I've been able to date. And it's been unlike anywhere I've been so far. I would actually say, just in terms of dating, it's been the best place I've been to so far.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
That's
and yeah,
that's
and it's
good.
interesting as well because a lot of Turkish guys, they say similar things about the Turkish girls as well, which is like, oh, they're useless, they only like foreigners, or they have all these like red flags and all this stuff. So there is like
Mm,
the dating market in Turkey is a bit messed up, I think. Uh,
mm.
it's just a bit kind of, yeah, it's just not in a great place between with the natives, I think.
What do you find like is the actual logistical side of Turkey? Actually doing going around doing your
Okay.
day game business. Like, how do you actually find it there?
Um, it's that's actually a good question. I mean, in Istanbul, the streets can be a bit narrow and very kind of populated as well, so it can be a bit tricky to actually approach. So yeah, it can be a bit tricky, just literally logistically, just trying to kind of walk over or like to a girl. It can actually be a bit of a mission sometimes. It's also very hilly as well, so there's loads of hills, and you're like sweating half the time. So like you approach a girl and you're just like absolutely drenched in sweat, like you just came out of a swimming pool or something. So that's kind of funny. But yeah, but I think like a lot of the time, girls don't really get approached much, or if they do, they don't get approached very well. So if you can just go in there and have like half decent social skills, already you're in the top 0.00001% of guys. You know, just the ability just to go in there as just a normal human and just apply just half decent social skills. Yeah, you're already like well ahead of the pack. So that's like one of the key things, yeah, with Turkey.
Yeah, I was just gonna say there. I mean, that's a good point that you make. I mean, there are very few guys who actually do any day game, but like an even smaller percentage of those guys are actually any good at it. And it's like it's completely true what you say that you can approach a girl, but it's like there's a difference between the actual quality of the conversation that you're having compared to other ones. How's the weather been whilst you've been there?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good for most of like August, September. It's like 30 degrees, and now it's like it's not too bad. It's still like sort of late teens ish for most of the time. I have heard it gets a bit cold in the winter months, but yeah, it's pretty good weather actually. Yeah. The air is really bad though. It's very polluted. The air is a bit shit.
It?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's worse than London, I think.
Oh, fucking hell! Wow.
Yeah, there was go out.
There was one more thing that I wanted to ask you actually. It was like the place that you've not been to yet that you want to go to. Like, is there anywhere in particular that stands out for you as somewhere that you've heard maybe good stories about, or maybe you've heard bad stories about, and you want to go there anyway? Like, where is it for you?
Well, Turkey was always a place I wanted to go to, and I'm here now, so that's one thing off the list. I've been wanting to go to Colombia and Brazil for quite a while because, well, to be honest, I've kind of experienced a bit of that in Mexico. Certainly, there's quite a few Colombians in Mexico, but yeah, I think like it's kind of more of the same, really. It's more of that kind of that fun sort of atmosphere when it comes to dating, and just having, like I said before, having that kind of raw attraction with a lot of like the local girls who are just massively into foreigners who they just don't have that much exposure to. They watch TV and they see gringos on TV, but to actually meet one in real life for them is like there was one girl in Mexico in Playa, and I just approached her just doing my normal thing, and she was literally treating me like a celebrity, just like wanting to take photos with me and stuff. It was just like I felt a bit embarrassed. I was just like, no, come on, I'm just a normal guy.
She's like, I've seen your prank videos. It's you.
Yeah.
When are you gonna make more?
Recognized.
I've seen all your infields.
Yeah.
You're my favorite day gamer.
Oh yeah, biggest fan.
That's hilarious. No, that's good. I hope that you managed to get there. I mean, I was saying to you before this call started, like in January and February, I'm either going to go to Brazil or Colombia just to escape the English winter. But I think it will be Brazil that I go to just because I've got Portuguese. I can speak Portuguese at a pretty decent level. And also it's going to be the carnival there as well in February. So for me, it makes more sense to go there. But yeah, you'll have to let me know, like, if you decide, like, when you decide to go there. If we happen to be in the same place, that'd be good.
Yeah, I think like just that ability, if you've got that to speak a bit of Portuguese, will also place you massively ahead of the pack. Because like if you go there during the Rio Carnival, of course you're going to get a few like foreigners and American guys who are going over there. But if you can actually speak a bit of Portuguese, it actually shows that you're putting in the effort to actually, integrate yourself a bit into the culture, and you're not just some sex tourist, just like, oh yeah, I'm just here to just, get fuck some of the Brazilian girls or whatever. It kind of gives that impression that you actually care and that you actually are trying to, just integrate yourself a bit more. I have that advantage as well because I speak, a bit of Spanish as well. So when I was in Mexico, I was able to do that as well. And people were even saying like, oh yeah, no, I really appreciate it when a foreigner can actually speak the native language. you know, they do appreciate it. So it does give you quite a big advantage, I think.
I think it's a respect thing as well, isn't it? If you're
Yeah.
gonna go onto foreign soil, it's like taking shoes off and you go into someone's house. It's like people just respect the effort that you've made, or they certainly appreciate the gesture that you've made, even if you're absolutely shit at it. I think it's the effort that they appreciate rather than the proficiency. So no, it's really good.
Just out of curiosity, actually, what made you learn Portuguese? Did you learn it at school, or did you? Is it just something you've always kind of wanted to do?
Nah, so essentially in 2017, I was a lifeguard in America and I worked at a summer camp. And one of the guys who I worked with was from Sao Paulo. And we said to each other, when we finish working together at this camp, I will come and visit you in Sao Paulo. So I was meant to visit him, but then COVID hit. But I'd been learning Portuguese with him, like over voice call for like 2 or 3 months. And I was on this other app as well. I can't remember what it's called, but I was like practicing with loads of native speakers, and I got to like a very high level of fluency because basically that's all I was doing. And then COVID hit. I didn't end up going, but what I found with Portuguese, because I was doing it a lot, like all day, every day, like I've retained a lot of it, and I was flicking through some of my old notes the other day. I was like, oh yeah, I could easily pick this back up again. But it's crazy what the brain can actually store, you know, when you've been feeding it that constant repetition. So, but yeah, I'll probably go to Rio over Sao Paulo because I've heard Sao Paulo is a bit of a concrete jungle. I've heard Rio is nicer.
I've heard mixed things actually. I've heard that Rio is amazing during the carnival time. You know, because it gets like loads of people from all over the Brazil. They go over there, but the rest of the time it can be a bit of a maybe slightly more somber kind of vibe. But yeah, I've heard kind of good things about Sao Paulo. It's a bit more mixed in terms of the types of people there. I find it's a bit more kind of authentic Brazilian, I've heard as well. But yeah, I think I would imagine like they're all good places. You know, it's big, massive cities, so you're going to get a great amount of girls and people to meet and stuff. So yeah, it'll be amazing no matter what. But yeah.
Yeah, no.
Were you thinking of going to Mexico at some point, or?
Yeah. Those are my top 3, I think, at this point in my life. I feel as though, like, I don't know about you, but with anywhere in Europe, I feel as though like once you've seen about 5 or 6 European cities, you've basically seen them all. They've all got like the same layout, the same feel. Like you were saying, you went to like Paris and Amsterdam. Like you don't feel as though like you're crazy far from home. They've all been hit by like globalization. You can find a McDonald's like down the street. It doesn't feel, for me anyway, now I'm not getting that hit of novelty, and I feel as though that novelty which I'm chasing is only going to be found further afield. So yeah, my top 3: Colombia, Brazil, and Mexico. Certainly from what you've told me about Mexico, it seems like it would be right up my street. And then that would give me more motivation to become proficient in Spanish as well, because it's not actually that dissimilar from Portuguese. So, but yeah, I think Mexico definitely. I think next year will be a good year for me in terms of gallivanting to these places. So yeah, no, it'll be good.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. Like, yeah, like I said before, like, you know, go to places like Paris, Amsterdam. It's not that dissimilar to London, to be honest. But the further away you go from the UK or from America, the more interesting it gets. And that's the case certainly in Europe. You know, places like Hungary, Czech Republic, they're a bit more interesting than say Paris, for me at least. But even going beyond that to places like Ukraine and Russia, that's where the culture is like completely different and really interesting. You know, I think that every guy, certainly every UK guy, should have at least experienced one of these places at least once in their lifetime. You know, Poland with all the Ukrainian girls and the Polish girls, or Latin America. You know, just having that abundance of girls who are just from a completely different culture, and who are potentially going to be really into you as well, because they're, like I said before, they're not used to Western guys. They're not used to speaking to Western guys, and just embracing that whole kind of dynamic is just going to be absolutely amazing experience for anyone, I think.
Yeah, I think certainly if you're a guy listening to this and you've got like a 9 to 5 job, you can definitely. I think it's all about planning it as well. You know, you can easily bank up your leave, bank up your holidays, get like 2 weeks out of work, and just go hell for leather in these places. Because like you say, like, you know, you don't want to wake up when your best years are behind you. And if you've got the funds and you've got the mobility as well, like you can actually walk and talk, and you're in decent shape, you might as well
You're in
make the
your
most of it.
prime as
Because
well.
100%, like we were saying before, you don't want to get,
months.
you don't want to be the guy who's like been on self improvement till he's 38 and it's like, where's all the girls at? It's like there is a shelf life with your male life, and I think not enough guys are actually taking advantage of that. So,
and
no,
like
good.
so many guys are like they kind of think like that would be an amazing experience to go to somewhere like Latin America or Turkey or something, but they're like a little bit afraid of like A, the time difference, B, they think it's a bit of a dodgy place, C, I don't know, they're worried about the drug cartels or something, you know, or they've heard stories in the news of you know, some tourists trying to smuggle drugs and then they get kidnapped and thrown in jail. But the thing is, like, okay, you take somewhere like Playa del Carmen, for example, like the police presence there is pretty shit, but it's the safest place in the whole of Mexico because it's run by the drug cartels, because they want to maintain the tourism. They don't want any fuck ups to happen with the tourists because it's going to directly have an impact on the economy otherwise. So that's why it's an incredibly safe place. Um, and if you go to like, you know, some other place, for example, Sao Paulo in Brazil, yes, there is a chance, you know, you might get robbed, but as long as you're like, don't act like a complete idiot, like flashing your expensive Armani watch or something, nothing bad is going to happen to you realistically. As long as, you know, you don't act like a complete moron or get like super wasted on your way back home at night, then nothing bad is going to happen.
But you know what? That's literally the same anywhere, isn't it? Like you can easily
Exactly.
get mugged walking down Oxford Street in London.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like common sense is not common practice a lot of these times. And just because you go abroad doesn't mean bad things will happen to you. Bad things can happen to you anyway. But it's that like it's the could, it's the might, if the what if. So it's like, you know, if you're living your life living for those what ifs, you're going to stay inside of your entire life and just be scared to do anything. I would also say as well to any guy, just stop watching the news. It's designed to scare you. It's designed to keep you inside. They just want to fill their own personal narrative. They don't care about you. They just want to sell newspapers and get clicks. So get away from the news and just live experientially rather than through the screen.
And the other thing as well with like Latin America, for example, like that some people are worried about the time difference. It's like, oh, it's going to fuck up with my work, but that's just something you can get around. Another, you know, other people think that like, oh, the flights are going to be so expensive. It's like, yeah, of course the flights are going to be a bit more expensive than if you just were to travel to some European country, but the cost of living when you're actually there is just way lower. So it actually compensates to quite a large degree as well, because like, you know, the amount that you'd be saving on your rent and your food and all the other stuff when you're actually there actually compensates for the cost of the flight, you know. So that's another thing to bear in mind.
And it's getting your priorities in check as well. Like there's so many people who I went to school with or people I know, they're dropping about 200-300 quid a weekend on booze, on parties, on alcohol. So it's like, if you get your priorities in check, then you'll actually be able to free up this money anyway. And that's money that you're going to spend anyway. So it's like, you're even going to spend it on pointless things like alcohol parties in like wherever you live in bloody Manchester, or you could be a bit more frugal with your money and put it towards something, because once those flights are booked, you're going. I think that's one of the best things that you can do. Just book the flights, and then the rest of the adventure will take care of itself. Because but I think as well though, if you pay good money for something, you're going to be committed to see it through. Like if you paid 50 quid for a flight to Brazil, you could easily sack it off. But if you paid like 500-600 quid for a return flight, you're 100% going, because you don't want to lose that money. So I think actually investing in a flight, you're going to go and you're going to have the best time because you've actually invested that into yourself rather than just pissing it away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's actually a really good point. It's like you've made that monetary commitment, so then you actually have to follow through with it. And it's actually similar with coaching as well. You know, if you're going to spend money on coaching, you know you're going to get massive value from it, and you know that commitment is going to pay off because you've actually committed that amount of money as well. Like, you know, if you paid like 20 quid, you just wouldn't be taking it as seriously, would you?
100%. It's the same with anything. If you buy like a £1,000 pair of trainers, you're gonna look after those trainers with your life. If they cost you £10, you don't care. If someone steals them, if you get a little bit of mud on them, whatever. So there is an intense amount of value attached to higher ticket purchases. And I think, yeah, when you have paid a good money for something, you're going to be fully committed to seeing it through and making sure you actually get your money's worth. So yeah, I think that is a good point.
And the other thing as well is that, you know, nowadays people are just working from home a lot of the time, aren't they? So it's never been easier actually just to book a few weeks or whatever away from the UK or the US or wherever. You know, it's so much easier now than it used to be. And if you've got a decent relationship with your boss or whoever you're working for or with or whatever, like you can just explain to them, like, I want to spend a month in Brazil, you know. I don't see why that should be a problem, you know, unless you have to have a meeting in person at some point, which a lot of the time people don't. A lot of people do actually have the freedom just to work from home more than they are actually doing, because, you know, a lot of people, you know, if they have like a normal sort of office job, they're kind of spending maybe, you know, some people maybe they spend 1 or 2 days in the office, the rest of the week working from home. Like, try and actually figure out, are those days in the office actually required, you know? Because if you've got a decent relationship with your colleagues, you could even ask, like, you know, I want to spend like a month in Brazil, just to do a bit of traveling whilst working at the same time, because it's something I've always wanted to do. But it's about actually, you know, being proactive enough to actually ask for it, you know, ask for it and follow through with it. You know, if you don't ask,
I think that is a common sticking point of the general population. I think people are resistant to shaking up the status quo and just accepting what they've got as just like, oh well, this is just what I've got. But like you say, it can be so simple to make change in your life. Asking a question, or maybe asking someone to cover some of your shifts and you can give them a favor back, or just having that conversation with your boss. Like, you'll be surprised what people actually do for you, especially as well, like if you're really good at your job and you're like an irreplaceable commodity in that company, like they don't want to lose you. So they're definitely going to give you more benefits or more help if you're actually a benevolent force in the company. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But no, thanks for this discussion. It's been good. I hope the people who've been listening to it have got a good amount of value from it, because I think we've covered a lot of topics, and it's been good to pick your brains from a pure selfish point of view as well, because you've got more experience with this than I do. You've been to more places than I have, and it's good for me to get this wisdom from you.
And likewise as well with you as well. You know, you've been to Poland, Romania, you know, places I haven't been to. So it's always interesting to, you know.
Have you not been to Poland yet?
I think I've probably had like 5 or 6 layovers in Poland, but I've never actually gone into Poland. It's quite funny actually. It was actually on my list to go to, but now it's not so much on my list as much anymore. I think because it's just like I kind of know what I'm going to get from it now. Whereas before it was a bit of an unknown sort of thing, and I was a bit more intrigued by it. But now it's just a bit like, well, you know, I've been to Ukraine already, spent quite a bit of time there. It's just like it's a bit more of the same, really. And
I'll tell you where is really good. Vienna. Vienna is really good.
Yeah. I've not been there before. I did actually spend a bit of time earlier this year in Germany, which was actually better than I thought it would be. I think mainly because, like, okay, like obviously, like German girls, they're not exactly renowned for being like the most attractive in the world. That's not to say that they're all unattractive, but like what I did find is that, like, if you can go in there like really charismatic, really bold, and really confident, that's just not something they're used to, because, you know, typically in German culture, people are a bit shy, a bit reserved. They're not the most confident normally, especially when it comes to speaking to new people. So you can really have quite a big impact in places like Germany.
Did you find that in Sweden as well?
Yes, yeah, in Sweden as well, yeah, in Stockholm, yeah, because they're not used to that level of confidence, and so it's a massive spike of interest from their point of view. Whereas I feel like in London, for example, you know, if you approach a really, really attractive girl, it's like you go in there super confident, and, you know, you've got your shit together, you're an attractive dude, you've maximized your looks as best as possible, all of that stuff. Sometimes that's just not enough in itself. You need to really kind of spike her emotions. You need to have an amazing conversation. You need to really kind of pique her interest. And so like you know, you really have to do all these things as best as you possibly can to get that girl in London, because of the fact that there's so much fucking competition, and she's constantly surrounded by confident guys, not guys that know about Daygame, just confident guys in general, guys within her social circle, high value guys, you know, just millions of options basically. Whereas you go to somewhere like Germany, where the social skills or that level of confidence isn't quite the same, you can really have a big impact there. That's kind of what I found.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So
Actually,
yeah.
when you mentioned that, because like certainly because like for the first year or so of my apprenticeship in Daygame, it was all the UK. You know, it was like all major cities in the UK. And certainly, like you say, like London is difficult. But I think if you can make things happen in London, then when you do go abroad, you're going to have a far better time. I think that's why I was able to do so well in Krakow, because I'd put so many reps in the UK, up in Scotland, Birmingham, Bristol, Manchester, like everywhere in the UK. Then going abroad, I was like, "Fuck, this is piss easy over here." So
Yeah.
I would definitely say to guys, like, learning in the UK before you go abroad will set you up for success. Like whatever major city you're near in the UK, just get your reps in there first, because then when you do go abroad, because you've already put the practice in, you'll clean up abroad. But like we said at the start, like if you're shit in the UK, you'll still be shit abroad. You have to get this skill set down, and then you can take it global, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, I totally agree with that 100%. Like, I feel like London is one of the most difficult places to learn Daygame, but it's also one of the best places to learn, just because of the sheer amount of different interactions you're going to encounter. So you're going to get like the really busy natives that don't have time to speak to you, or you've only got like 1 minute to kind of get a really good impression across, and you know, you're going to get ones which give you kind of one word answers, and then you're going to get some who are like, you know, tourists without, who are just not busy, or like they're solo travelers, and those ones end up being like far more kind of interested in actually speaking to you. You know, you get all different types of interactions in London, and that's why it's, in my opinion, probably one of the best places to actually learn this stuff. But like you say, like if you can get good in London and then transfer those skills abroad, it definitely does seem easier. But there is actually a bit of a trap. If you spend too long abroad, you get a little bit complacent sometimes. So you,
100%.
so
Yeah,
like so like I actually noticed that myself actually, like after, actually no, I noticed that when I was in Ukraine. I went from Ukraine to Serbia, and in Serbia it's like they speak really good English, and the girls are really hot, and there's a lot of high value guys in Serbia. So like I had to like, or like in Ukraine a lot of the time it felt sometimes like I was speaking to a child because of the language barrier, just having to speak like really basic English. But then when I went to Serbia, it's like, oh shit, all of a sudden I need to actually step my shit up again,
you need to
which
relearn the
is
English
funny.
language.
Yeah, I need to relearn how to speak, yeah, everything, learn the alphabet and all kinds of stuff.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
but
Um,
it's all good experience.
yeah, no, that's good. No, yeah, no, thank you again for this conversation. It's been
Yeah.
good. So if guys want to contact you for any coaching, like what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, so best just to send an email. So my email is ed@ed-game.com. So yeah, I do coaching in London as well as abroad. So yeah, that's the best way to check it out. And then yeah,
And
YouTube channel is Ed Game Coaching.
perfect. And you're going to be knocking between Istanbul and London for the foreseeable.
Most likely, yeah. I haven't got like concrete plans at the moment, but yeah, once I know what it is, then yeah. So like right now, I'm in Istanbul, potentially going back to London at some point, and potentially Latin America. But yeah, it's not too sure at the moment. Just kind of making plans as I go.
And if guys want to join you in Istanbul, is that something that they can do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm open for coaching. Yeah, just send me an email. Like I said, Istanbul is one of the best places I've been to for dating. It's a bit of an unknown place, but yeah, it's definitely one of those places where if you can, push yourself to come here, then yeah, there's massive rewards here for sure.
So you think it would be a good place for a beginner to visit?
I think it's okay for beginners. I mean, the thing is here is that when you do approach, sometimes you do get a few people looking because it's not a particularly done thing here. But if you are someone who does have a bit of or like a lot of anxiety to approach, you might hear that and be like, oh God, I'm really worried now, or maybe I shouldn't go there. I need somewhere a bit easier. But actually, it is actually one of the best places to actually confront that. If you do have a bit of that spotlight effect issue, then this is actually a really, really good way to actually confront that, because there might be a few sort of glances your way when you do approach, realistically, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's actually a good thing, just to kind of get you used to it. Know that is probably going to happen, but nothing bad is ultimately going to happen to you, despite actually approaching. So that's what I would say.
Well, certainly then, like for me, if that was my major sticking point, if I was a guy listening to this and the spotlight effect was something that I really struggled with, I would definitely see that as a spotlight acclimatization experience, where
Exactly.
especially if I was working with you as well, because when you're working with a coach, you've got that social safety net there anyway. It's like you've got them covered, so you're going to be there in their corner, making sure that everything's all right, giving the feedback. So no, that's a good point. I think the fact that it scares you is the exact reason why you should do it. If the spotlight effect is something that scares the living shit out of you, then make that the reason why you're going to go for the coaching, to get over that sticking point rather than to avoid it. No,
exactly. Good. Yeah, that's exactly it, really. But it's also good for advanced guys or slightly more intermediate guys if they just want a bit of a different experience, because it's just like here for me, dating, it's just been absolutely incredible, because the girls here, they're not used to meeting foreign guys or like Western guys. So for them, it's an amazing experience, and it will be for you as well. It's just the sheer amount of just extremely hot girls who I've been able to consistently get out on dates with relatively low effort has just been absolutely amazing. And for
so
that
you found the overall flake rate has been lower than other places you've been to?
it's for me, it's been the lowest I've ever had anywhere.
But
Out there.
do you think that's down to location, or do you think you've just got better at this?
I think a lot of it is location, as well as the fact that I'm a European guy. It adds a lot of value. So I would say that is one of the main, but those are probably the main reasons, I would say. Of course, there's also experience as well, because the thing is, like, because I've got a lot of conviction when I go in for the approach, you know, so, because there's obviously a language barrier, for example, you approach a girl and she says, oh, sorry, I don't speak English. A lot of guys would just, be like, oh, okay, sorry, okay, well, nice to meet you, okay, bye, that kind of thing. Whereas it kind of forces you to be a bit more persistent, to the right degree of persistency, I think.
Yeah, playful. It's playful persistence, isn't it? It's playful persistence.
It's I think at the beginning, like if there is a language barrier, which is often the case in somewhere like Istanbul, it's just about kind of getting your point across, and then kind of leaving them the option of like, yes, okay, or no, no, thank you. But at least kind of getting your point across. And sometimes, at the beginning, they might kind of brush you off like, oh no, sorry, I don't speak English, because it's just like instinctive for them just to be like, nope, sorry, I don't speak English, because they don't know who the fuck you are. You haven't.
Well, and also if it's not commonplace culturally, they probably assume that anyone going over to them is trying to sell them something.
Yeah.
So it's most likely a defense mechanism for them to get rid of the salespeople. But by hanging in there, you give them the opportunity to actually discover who you actually are. And again, it's playful persistence. It's understanding that just because she said she doesn't speak English doesn't mean she can't actually speak English usually. Because and as well, like, girls feel the spotlight effect as well. Like sometimes girls can excuse themselves from a conversation because they feel a little bit awkward. And certainly in Romania, because a friend of mine joined me out here for a little bit, and what we found was, because it's not culturally commonplace to actually approach girls in public in Romania, we found like you actually had to use that as part of your open. Because I know a lot of guys in London will actually say that just because everyone else says it, like, oh, I know this is random, I know it's out of the blue. It's not really that random anymore in London, but it is random in Romania. It doesn't happen. So like by getting the feedback from the people here, you can then go into your conversations being like, listen, like I genuinely know that this doesn't usually happen here. And then it just puts them at ease, it breaks the ice, and then they're more they're more likely to actually have a conversation with you.
Yeah, that 100% makes sense. Yeah, that's true. So you're going to be in Latin America most likely, potentially Brazil in January, February. So obviously guys can get in touch with you for coaching for Rio.
Yeah, so I'll be in Bucharest in Romania for the entirety of November. So all my coaching slots are filled up in November. So please don't book a flight to come and see me in November because I don't have any availability for you. The next opportunity that guys have got to work with me is in London in the UK. So I'll be there for the entirety of December. And then that'll be people's final opportunity to work with me in the UK until the spring, essentially, of 2023. So if people are looking for UK-based coaching in London, it's only London for December. I'm not going to go anywhere else. I'm based in London, so that's where I'm going to be doing my coaching. So yeah, if anybody wants to get coached off me in December, you can email me. So it's ukdaygame@gmail.com, or you can message me on Instagram @KristianMagician. And then, yeah, I'll be bouncing off to South America for January and February. I'll be running things out there as well. So if you've been inspired by this podcast and you want to join me out there, if you're in America or if you're even in South America, then it's the same email address, ukdaygame@gmail.com or @KristianMagician on Instagram. So yeah, no, cool, nice one. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you again for taking the time to have this discussion. It's been good. If you've enjoyed the discussion that we've had, then press the like button, and it's always appreciated. Leave a comment as well, but no weird comments. Don't know about you, but I get some weird fucking comments on my YouTube channel.
It's only going to be weird comments.
It's always the first one is usually some like weird sex site selling like random porn.
Yeah, I get that as well. I think it's weird. Someone's like programmed some bot to like target all the Daygame, because they know that all the viewers are just like absolutely sexless people. So you need to go for that. It's smart though. So it's pretty smart.
It is, yeah. So sometimes I go over to James Tusk's comment section, and his are just rife with it. It's like his comment section's got gonorrhea from the sex robots, because they're all on there. So like it's funny. But yeah, I'm sure we don't actually have to have that in the discussion. But anyway, but yeah, nice one. No, thank you again for doing this.
Cheers for watching. If you'd be interested in one-to-one coaching with me, where we'll go out in public and work on your approaching girls, or more generally with your social confidence, please visit my website ed-game.com.